A rancher pushed the wrong black farm worker into the mud. Little did he know, she was a former undefeated wrestling champion. Colonel Thorne sneered, his voice cutting through the dry Texas air. "Know your place." With a violent shove, he sent Rosa sprawling into a muddy puddle left by the water truck. The other farmhands gasped, then fell silent, their eyes fixed on the ground. Thorne's foreman laughed, the sound echoing across the dusty yard. But Rosa didn't cry out. She didn't scramble to her feet. She simply stayed there for a moment, the cold mud seeping into her clothes, and then slowly, deliberately, she lifted her head. The look in her eyes wasn't one of shame or fear. It was a cold, hard fire that made Colonel Thorne's smile vanish instantly. This story is about dignity and the immense price of underestimating someone you think is beneath you. If you believe in justice and standing up to bullies, hit the like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and comment with your city and the word justice to show your support for Rosa's fight. The place was Dust Devil County, a forgotten corner of West Texas that time and progress had left behind. Here, one man made the rules, Colonel Alistair Thorne. He wasn't a real colonel. It was a nickname he'd inherited, along with the 1,000-acre ranch, Thorn Creek Holdings, that choked the life out of every smaller farm around it. He owned the land, the jobs, the water rights, and, most people whispered, the sheriff. For the men and women who worked his fields, he was judge, jury, and executioner. Rosa was one of those workers. In her late 30s, she was quiet, strong, and kept to herself. She did her job, collected her meager pay, and tried to stay invisible. She had come to Dust Devil County a few years ago seeking peace, a place to bury a past no one here knew about, a past filled with roaring crowds, championship belts, and a ring name that once struck fear into the hearts of her opponents, the Black Mamba. But that life was over, or so she thought. The problem started simply. Payday was short. Again. It was a common tactic of Thorne's, skimming a few dollars here and there from each worker, knowing they were too desperate or too afraid to complain. But this time, Rosa had had enough. She had a sick mother to care for, and every dollar counted. She had waited until the others were paid and approached Thorne calmly, her pay stub in hand. "Colonel, there's a mistake," she'd said, her voice steady. That was all it took. Publicly questioning him was a sin he could not forgive. His rage was instant and theatrical, designed to make an example of her. Now, lying in the mud, Rosa felt something awaken inside her. It was the same feeling she used to get before a championship match, a mix of cold anger and absolute focus. Thorne had made a critical error. He thought he was humiliating a powerless farmhand. He had no idea he had just declared war on a champion. Her reaction wouldn't just be about getting even. It would trigger a chain of events that would expose the rot at the heart of Dust Devil County. Thorne's empire was built on a foundation of secrets and crimes, land grabs, missing persons, and exploitation that ran deeper than anyone knew. As she pushed herself up, her movements were no longer those of a weary laborer. They were fluid, powerful, and precise. Every eye was on her. The foreman stopped laughing. Colonel Thorne took an involuntary step back. He saw the shift, the transformation from victim to threat, but he couldn't comprehend it. What happens when a man who has built his entire world on fear tries to break a woman who has forgotten how to be afraid? Mud dripped from Rosa's chin as she locked eyes with Colonel Thorne. The silence was heavy, broken only by the Texas wind whistling through the barn. One of the foremen, a burly man named Hank, chuckled and took a step forward, cracking his knuckles. "Looks like she needs another lesson, boss." He reached for her arm. It was the last mistake he'd make that day. In a blur of motion, Rosa shifted her weight. She didn't block his hand. She caught his wrist, using his own momentum to pull him off balance. She pivoted, dropping her center of gravity, and hooked her leg behind his. Hank, who outweighed her by 100 pounds, was suddenly airborne. He hit the ground with a heavy thud that knocked the wind out of him. He lay there, gasping like a fish on a dock. The second foreman, Jeb, froze mid-step. His bravado evaporated, replaced by a look of pure shock. The other workers, who had been staring at their boots, slowly lifted their heads, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. No one had ever stood up to Thorne's men. No one. Rosa didn't even glance at the man on the ground. Her gaze remained fixed on Thorne. "You owe me $27, she said, her voice low and dangerously calm. "For the hours you shorted me." Thorne's face was a mask of fury. His public humiliation was complete. He had tried to make an example of her, and she had turned the tables in front of his entire workforce. He pointed a trembling finger at Jeb. "What are you waiting for? Handle her." Jeb looked from his downed partner to Rosa, who now stood in a perfectly balanced, relaxed fighting stance. He swallowed hard and didn't move an inch. He was paid to bully the weak, not to get dismantled by a woman who moved like a predator. Rosa took a step toward Thorne. "The money," she repeated. For a moment, Thorne looked like he might explode, but he was a businessman before he was a brawler. He saw the situation for what it was, a temporary loss. A physical confrontation here would only diminish his authority further. He would settle this another way. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a wad of cash, peeled off 3 $10 bills and threw them on the ground at her feet. "Take your money, you animal," he snarled, "and get off my property. You're fired." Rosa looked at the money in the dirt, then back at him. She didn't bend to pick it up. "I'll collect it from your office, like a person." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her back straight, leaving Hank groaning in the mud and Thorne seething in silence. As she walked toward the workers' quarters, an old man named Samuel hurried to catch up with her. His face was etched with worry. "Rosa, what have you done?" he whispered, glancing back nervously. "You can't do that to him. He owns everything. He'll ruin you." "He started it," Rosa said simply, not breaking her stride. "It doesn't matter who started it," Samuel insisted. "It matters who finishes it, and Thorne always finishes it." Rosa stopped and looked at the old man. She saw genuine fear in his eyes, the same fear she saw in everyone else. Then maybe it's time someone else did. She went to her small, weathered cabin at the edge of the ranch property. Inside, her mother, Elena, was sitting in a rocking chair, a thin blanket over her lap. Elena was frail, her breathing often shallow, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She looked at Rosa's mud-stained clothes. "Trouble found you again, didn't it, Mija?" "I'm fine, Mama." Rosa began to clean herself up at the small basin. "You have that look in your eye," Elena said softly. "The one you used to get before a big match. The one I prayed I'd never see again. This isn't a ring, Rosa. There are no rules here." "There are no rules when you're being pushed into the mud either," Rosa replied, her voice tight. "He can't treat people like that." Later that evening, Rosa walked into the nearby town of Redemption, a town that was anything but. The main street was lined with dilapidated buildings, most with Thorne somewhere in their name. She needed to refill her mother's prescription at the only pharmacy located inside Thorne's general store. As she entered, the clerk's friendly smile faded. He filled the prescription nervously, his hands shaking as he took her cash. Word traveled fast in Dust Devil County. When she stepped back outside, a dusty sheriff's cruiser was parked at the curb, blocking her path. The driver's side door opened, and Sheriff Brody heaved himself out. He was a large, sloppy man whose uniform was stretched tight over his gut. His badge was the only clean thing on him. He didn't smile. "Rosa, heard you caused some trouble out at the ranch today." "The trouble found me," Rosa said, holding the bag with her mother's medicine tighter. "Is that right?" Brody drawled, stepping closer. "Well, Colonel Thorne filed a complaint. Assault. He wants to press charges. Get in the car, we're going for a ride." Rosa didn't move. She looked from the sheriff's sweaty face to the open door of the cruiser and back again. The few people on the street had vanished, melting back into the shadows of doorways. No one wanted to be a witness. Assault? She asked, her voice even. Hank grabbed me. I defended myself. That's not assault, Sheriff. That's survival. Brody's eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to being questioned. The Colonel's foreman has a different story, and in this county his story is the one that matters. Now, I'm not going to ask you again. Get in the car. He reached for her arm, the same way Hank had. Rosa took a half step back, her body tensing. She didn't want this fight, not with the law, but she wouldn't be manhandled again. I'll walk, she said. Where's the station? The ride's part of the service, Brody grunted. And before Rosa could react, he lunged, grabbing her with surprising speed. He was clumsy but strong, using his bulk to shove her against the car and cuff her hands behind her back. He pushed her into the back seat and slammed the door. The bag with her mother's medicine fell to the floorboard. He didn't drive toward the small brick building with the sign that said Sheriff's Office. Instead, he turned onto a dusty side road leading out of town, kicking up a cloud of red dirt behind them. They drove in silence for miles, the landscape growing emptier with every passing minute. Finally, he pulled over in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but scrub brush and the setting sun in sight. He killed the engine and turned in his seat to face her. Here's how this is going to work, he said, his voice dropping the lazy drawl. You're going to forget this ever happened. You're going to pack up your sick mother and you're going to leave Dust Devil County. You're not going to talk to anyone. You're not going to file any complaints. You're just going to disappear. If you do that, the assault charges disappear with you. And if I don't? Rosa asked. Brody smiled, a cold, unpleasant expression. Things happen out here. People get lost. Accidents happen. You understand? This was the real purpose of the ride, not an arrest, but a threat. I understand you work for Thorn, not the law, Rosa said flatly. The smile vanished. Brody got out, walked around to her side, and opened the door. He unlocked her cuffs. Then you can walk back to town and think about your options. He got back in his cruiser, turned it around and drove off, leaving her alone on the deserted road as darkness began to fall. It was a long, cold walk back. By the time Rosa reached her cabin, the moon was high in the sky. She was exhausted, but her anger had sharpened into a hard, clear resolve. As she approached her front door, she saw a piece of paper nailed to it. It was an official-looking document. An eviction notice, signed by Colonel Alastair Thorne, owner of the property. She had 72 hours to vacate. He wasn't just trying to scare her, he was trying to erase her and her mother. The next morning, Rosa found Samuel loading his meager belongings into a beat-up truck. "You're leaving?" she asked. Samuel wouldn't meet her eyes. "Thorne's men came by last night, said my services were no longer required. Gave me 24 hours to clear out. I've got family in Arizona. It's for the best." He finally looked at her, his expression a mix of pity and fear. "He'll crush you, Rosa. Just leave." Rosa watched him drive away, another person broken by Thorne's power. But she wasn't broken. She was a fighter. She just needed a different kind of ring. She remembered hearing whispers among the other workers about a young public defender in the next county, a man who wasn't on Thorne's payroll. His name was David Chen. She found his office in a cramped, dusty room above a hardware store. David was young, barely out of law school, with tired eyes and a desk buried under stacks of files. He listened to her story patiently, without interruption. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I'll be honest with you, Ms. Rosa. Filing a wrongful termination or harassment suit against Thorne is difficult. The judge is his fishing buddy. The DA owes him favors. Every case I've brought against him has been dismissed on a technicality." "So you're saying there's no hope?" Rosa said, her heart sinking. "I'm saying a direct legal challenge is what he expects. It's a game he's rigged," David said, leaning forward. "But you're not the first person he's done this to. Over the last 5 years, a dozen families have been forced off their land with similar tactics. They fight, they lose, they disappear. The official record says they sold their property to Thorn Creek Holdings for a fair price, but the people are just gone." He looked at her. a spark of something defiant in his eyes. He's built an empire on bullying people into submission. You're the first one I've met who doesn't seem afraid of him. That makes you dangerous. The eviction is just his next move. What's yours? Undefined Rosa looked at the stacks of paper threatening to swallow David's desk. This was his ring, and his opponents were legal loopholes and corrupt officials. She understood his fight. My next move, she said, her voice steady, is to find these other families. If they're all gone, someone has to know where they went. Someone has to remember what really happened. David nodded slowly, a glimmer of hope in his tired eyes. He pulled a worn folder from a teetering pile. This is what I have. It's not much. Police reports that go nowhere, statements that were later recanted. But it's a start. He opened it and pointed to a name. The Garcias. They had a small farm bordering Thorne's property to the north. They were the last ones to be forced out before you arrived. They had 2 kids. People said they were stubborn, that they loved their land. Then one day, they were just gone. The official story is they took a generous buyout and moved to California. And you don't believe that, Rosa stated. I believe Thorne is good at creating official stories, David corrected. The matriarch, Isabella Garcia, had a sister who runs a small diner on the county line, Maria Flores. She might talk to you, but be careful. She's been harassed by Brody's deputies before. Rosa took the information and left. She had less than 48 hours before the eviction. Time was a luxury she didn't have. When she got back to her cabin, she found her mother packing a small bag, her movements slow and pained. "Mama, what are you doing?" Rosa asked gently. "Getting ready to leave," Elena said, not looking at her. "There's no shame in survival, Mija. We find another town, another job. We start over." "No," Rosa said, her voice firm but full of love. "We're not running anymore. Not this time." Her words were interrupted by the sound of a truck engine rumbling outside. It was Thorne's foreman, Hank and Jeb. They got out, Hank carrying a crowbar, Jeb holding the eviction notice. "Time's up," Hank called out, a smug grin on his face. "Colonel decided to speed up the process. You've got 1 hour to get your junk out before we clear it for you." Rosa stepped outside, positioning herself between them and the door. "The notice says 72 hours. It's a legal document." Jeb laughed. "Legal? Lady, this is Dust Devil County. The Colonel's word is the law. Now move." Hank took a step forward, swinging the crowbar idly. It was a clear threat. Rosa knew she couldn't win a physical fight against both of them, not without landing herself in a real jail cell this time. She had to use a different weapon. "You're right," she said, her tone suddenly changing to one of weary acceptance. "You're absolutely right. I just need to get my mother's medicine from inside. It's very fragile." Her compliance surprised them. Hank lowered the crowbar slightly, suspicion in his eyes. "Fine, 5 minutes, then we start." Rosa went inside, her mind racing. She grabbed her mother's medicine and her small old cell phone. She walked back to the doorway. "One more thing," she said, holding up the phone. "My lawyer, David Chen, advised me to record any and all interactions regarding this eviction. So just for the record, could you please state your names and confirm that you are here on Colonel Thorne's orders to illegally evict me before the legally mandated 72 hours are up?" She had the phone pointed right at them, the small red light indicating it was recording. Hank and Jeb froze. They were thugs, not lawyers. They operated in the gray areas, in the shadows of intimidation where nothing could be proven. A video recording was proof. Hank's face turned red. "You're bluffing." "Oh, am I?" Rosa asked calmly. "This video, along with my testimony and the eviction notice, will be sent to the state attorney's office. Maybe the local law works for Thorne, but I'm willing to bet the state doesn't. Are you?" Jeb looked at Hank, his confidence gone. This was above their pay grade. After a tense moment, Hank spat on the ground. "This ain't over!" he snarled. They got back in their truck and sped away. Rosa's hands were shaking, but she had won. She had bought herself time. The next day, She found Maria's diner. It was a small, clean place that smelled of coffee and fried bacon. Maria Flores was a tired-looking woman in her 40s, with the same stubborn set to her jaw that David had described. When Rosa mentioned the Garcia family, Maria's face closed up. "I don't know anything," she said, turning away to wipe down a clean counter. "I'm not with the sheriff," Rosa said quietly. "I'm not with Thorne. He's trying to do to me what he did to your sister. He evicted me." Maria stopped wiping. She looked at Rosa, really looked at her, and saw the truth in her eyes. She glanced around the empty diner, then gestured for Rosa to follow her into the back kitchen. "They wouldn't sell," Maria whispered, her voice cracking. "Isabella loved that land. Her husband built their house with his own hands. Then things started to go wrong. Their well went dry, just theirs, no one else's. A week later, their crops were blighted. It was like the land itself turned on them. Thorne showed up with a lowball offer. They refused. The next week, their barn burned down. The sheriff ruled it an accident." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. They had nothing left. Thorne came back with another offer, even lower than the first. They had to take it. Isabella called me the night they left. She was crying. She said, "He didn't just buy our land, Maria. He poisoned it." Rosa felt a cold chill. This wasn't just bullying. This was systematic, calculated destruction. "Did she say where they were going?" Rosa asked. Maria shook her head. "No. I never heard from them again. It's like they vanished off the face of the earth." She reached under the counter and pulled out a faded photograph of a smiling family of 4. "This is them. This is what he took." Rosa looked at the photo. She now knew Thorne didn't just take land. He erased families. And she had a horrifying suspicion that poisoning the land was just the beginning. Rosa left the diner with the faded photograph in her pocket and a cold knot in her stomach. Maria's words, "He poisoned it," echoed in her mind. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a statement of fact. She drove straight back to David Chen's office, the 72-hour eviction deadline, now feeling like a ticking bomb. She found him poring over a law book, looking even more exhausted than before. She placed the photograph of the Garcia family on his desk. "Their well went dry, then their crops died, then their barn burned down," she said without preamble. "Maria Flores said her sister told her Thorne poisoned the land." David looked up, his brow furrowed. "Poisoned how? Contaminated the water? Used a chemical agent?" "I don't know," Rosa admitted, "but it's a pattern. He makes the land worthless, then buys it for nothing. I need to see that farm." David's expression turned serious. "That's Thorne's property now. Going there is trespassing. If Brody catches you, he'll throw you in a cell and lose the key. And if we do nothing, I'm out on the street in a day, and he keeps doing this to other people," Rosa countered. "You said it yourself. A direct legal challenge is a losing game. We need something he can't bury with local politics. Something bigger." He stared at her for a long moment, seeing the unshakable resolve in her eyes. This wasn't just about her anymore. He let out a long breath. "Okay, but we do this my way. We go tonight. We don't touch anything. We just look. If we find something, we document it and bring it to the EPA and the state authorities. We go over Brody's and Thorne's heads." That night, under the cover of a moonless sky, they drove David's beat-up sedan down a series of back roads, parking it half a mile away from the Garcia property line. They cut through a stretch of thorny mesquite, the silence of the desert broken only by their footsteps and the chirping of crickets. The moment they stepped onto the former Garcia farm, the change was palpable. The air felt heavy, sterile. The ground beneath their feet was hard and cracked, and the dead stalks of corn plants stood like skeletal fingers pointing at the sky. Even in the dark, they could feel the wrongness of the place. "Maria was right," Rosa whispered. "This land is dead." They moved cautiously toward where the farmhouse once stood, now just a pile of charred rubble from the accidental fire. Nearby was the well, a stone circle with a heavy wooden cover. Rosa and David heaved the cover off. The beam of David's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but a deep, black hole. There was no reflection of water, just the smell of dust and something else. A faint, acrid chemical odor. He wouldn't just dump something down the well, David reasoned, shining his light around the area. Too obvious. He'd bury it. His flashlight beam caught something behind a small rise, a place where the earth looked disturbed, less natural than the surrounding terrain. They walked over and found it. Partially buried in the dirt were several large 55-gallon drums. They were rusted and dented, but one still had a faded label on its side. Rosa knelt, wiping away the grime with her sleeve. The logo was a stylized blue wave over a chemical beaker. The words were barely legible. Petrochem Solutions. David sucked in a sharp breath. Oh no, I know that name. They're a Houston-based chemical disposal company. They have a rap sheet a mile long for illegal dumping and cutting corners. If Thorne is in business with them... Suddenly, the sound of an engine cut through the night. Headlights swept across the field, heading their way. Down! Rosa hissed. They dropped to the ground behind the barrels, their hearts pounding. A familiar-looking ranch truck rumbled to a stop 100 yards away. It was Jeb. He got out, sweeping a powerful flashlight beam across the dead fields. It was a routine patrol. They held their breath as the beam passed just over their heads. Jeb pulled out a phone. His voice carried clearly in the still night air. Yeah, it's me. All quiet at the North Parcel. No, nobody's been sniffing around. It's a ghost town out here, just like you like it, Colonel. All right, I'll check the west perimeter next. Jeb got back in his truck and drove off, his taillights disappearing over a hill. Rosa and David stayed hidden for a full 5 minutes before they dared to move. The conversation they just overheard was a smoking gun. It confirmed everything. This isn't just a land grab, David said, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and excitement. He's not buying farms. He's buying private, unregulated landfills. He's letting Petrochem dump toxic waste here, poisoning the groundwater, and getting paid millions to do it. And the families, he's not just forcing them out, he's making them disappear to cover his tracks. Rosa looked from the barrels to the charred remains of the Garcia home. This was the turning point. Her fight was no longer about a stolen paycheck or a muddy set of clothes. It was about uncovering a conspiracy that was poisoning the earth and erasing the lives of anyone who stood in its way. She had stumbled into Thorne's secret graveyard, and now she had to be the one to expose it to the world before he buried her in it too. We have to go. Now, Rosa whispered, pulling David back toward the fence line. The adrenaline from the near discovery was still coursing through her veins. David, however, was frozen for a second, his mind racing. Wait, we need proof. My word against his is nothing. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking as he tried to open the camera app. I need pictures. The barrels, the label. There's no time, Rosa insisted, her voice a low, urgent command. Jeb is circling the perimeter. He could come back from the other side. A flash from that screen could get us killed. She grabbed his arm. We have what we need for now. We know what he's doing. We know the company name. We get out of here alive, and we use that. Her logic was undeniable. A picture wasn't worth their lives. David nodded, his face pale in the dim light. They scrambled back through the mesquite, every snapping twig sounding like a gunshot in the tense silence. They didn't speak again until they were safely back in David's car, speeding away from Dust Devil County. What now? Rosa asked, watching the desolate landscape fly by in the rearview mirror. We call the EPA. Yes, but not from here, David said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Thorne has ears everywhere. The local phone operator is his cousin. We drive to my office. I have a secure line. I also have a contact at the state's Environmental Crimes Unit. Someone I knew from law school. He owes me a favor. He glanced at her. But you can't go back to that cabin. Not now. Not ever. The eviction was a warning. Now that we know his real secret, he won't bother with warnings. The thought sent a wave of ice through Rosa's chest. My mother. They drove straight to her cabin. The eviction notice was still nailed to the door, a flimsy piece of paper representing a threat that had now become deadly serious. Rosa burst inside, her heart pounding. "Mama, we have to go. Pack your things. Now!" Eleanor was sitting in her rocking chair, but she wasn't resting. Her breathing was ragged, and she was clutching a handkerchief to her mouth. When she pulled it away, Rosa saw a small, dark speck of blood on the white cloth. "Mama," Rosa whispered, her own breath catching in her throat. "It's just the dust," Elena rasped, trying to wave it off. "This dry air, it gets in my lungs." But Rosa knew it wasn't the dust. A horrifying realization began to dawn on her. They had lived on Thorne's property for 3 years. They drank the water from the well on the property. A well fed by the same groundwater that Thorne was selling to Petrochem as a toxic waste dump. Her mother wasn't just sick, she was being poisoned. Slowly, day by day, this whole county was being poisoned. The anger that rose in her was cold and pure. This was no longer just a fight for justice, it was a fight for her mother's life. "David's waiting in the car," she said, her voice thick with emotion she couldn't show. "We're leaving. I'll explain on the way." She helped her mother to her feet, grabbing the small bag Elena had already packed. Meanwhile, in his sprawling ranch house, Colonel Thorne was pouring himself a glass of expensive whiskey. His phone rang. It was Sheriff Brody. "We might have a problem," Brody said, his voice stripped of its usual lazy drawl. "I don't have problems, Sheriff. I have solutions," Thorne replied smoothly. "What is it?" "It's that lawyer." "Chen," Brody said. "My guy at the phone company just flagged a call from his office, made about an hour ago, to a state investigator in Austin, a guy named Peterson in the Environmental Crimes Division." The glass in Thorne's hand stopped halfway to his lips. His eyes went cold. There was only one reason David Chen would be calling the Environmental Crimes Division. And the woman, Rosa, still at her cabin, last I checked. "Her eviction deadline is tomorrow morning," Brody reported. Thorne was silent for a moment, the gears in his mind turning with cold, ruthless precision. Chen wasn't just filing a harassment complaint, he knew. Somehow he and that woman knew. They had been on his land. They had found something. The phone call was the first move. An official investigation would follow. Subpoenas, soil samples, it would all unravel. "The deadline has been moved up," Thorne said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. "I want them gone. Tonight. The woman and her mother. And I want you to pay a visit to that lawyer. Remind him what happens when you stick your nose in other people's business in my county. Make sure he can't make any more phone calls." "What about the bodies?" Brody asked, his voice low. "An unfortunate accident," Thorne said coldly. "Tragic fire. Faulty wiring in that old cabin. Happens all the time. Handle it." He hung up the phone. Back at the cabin, Rosa was helping her mother into the back seat of David's car. David was anxiously watching the road. "We need to move," he urged. As Rosa closed the car door, she heard it, the distant rumble of an engine. But it wasn't one engine, it was two. Headlights appeared at the far end of the dirt road, cutting through the darkness. A ranch truck and a sheriff's cruiser driving side by side, blocking any chance of escape. They weren't coming to talk, they were coming to finish it. "Go!" Rosa yelled, jumping into the passenger seat. "Reverse, now!" David didn't hesitate. He slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning in the loose dirt, and shot backward into the darkness behind the cabin. The sedan fishtailed wildly, but he kept his foot on the gas. In the back seat, Elena coughed, her frail body jostled by the violent motion. The ranch truck and the cruiser sped up, their high beams pinning the sedan. There was no road behind the cabin, only open field. A fence line loomed in their rearview mirror. They were trapped. "They're not trying to arrest us," David said, his voice tight with panic. "I know," Rosa replied, her mind shifting into a familiar gear. The fear was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating focus of a fighter in the ring. The ring was now a dark field, and her opponents were in 2-ton steel cages. "Keep going straight back, as fast as you can. Aim for the fence. We'll crash. Just do it." Sheriff Brody pulled his cruiser alongside the fleeing sedan, trying to force it to a stop. From the ranch truck, Hank leaned out the passenger window, a heavy-duty flashlight in one hand and something else in the other. It was a can of gasoline. This was Thorne's plan: box them in, douse the car, and set it ablaze. No witnesses, no evidence, just a tragic accident. Rosa saw the glint of the can. She knew they had seconds. "David, when I say now, turn hard right and hit the brakes. Hard." "What?" "Trust me." The sedan was 50 feet from the barbed wire fence. Brody's cruiser was right beside them, its siren now screaming. Hank was preparing to throw the gas can. "Now!" Rosa shouted. David wrenched the steering wheel to the right and stomped on the brakes. The sedan spun a full 180 degrees in a cloud of dust, its headlights now facing their pursuers. For a critical second, Brody and Hank were blinded by the sudden glare. It was the opening Rosa needed. She was already out of the car. She moved with a speed and purpose that defied the chaos around her. Brody, disoriented, was just opening his door. Rosa met him before his foot hit the ground. She didn't throw a punch. She used a wrestling move, a classic spear tackle, driving her shoulder into his midsection. The air rushed out of Brody's lungs in a pained whoosh, and he collapsed back into his seat, stunned and breathless. The ranch truck had swerved to avoid the spinning car and now sat stalled 10 yards away. Hank jumped out, furious, still holding the gas can. He ran toward Rosa. "You're dead!" he screamed. Rosa didn't wait for him to reach her. She ran toward him. It was the last thing he expected. He hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, Rosa closed the distance. She ducked under his wild swing, grabbed the arm holding the gas can, and used his own momentum to twist him around. With a sharp, practiced motion, she applied pressure to his elbow joint. An armbar takedown. Hank howled in pain and dropped the can as his arm was hyperextended. He crumpled to the ground, clutching the injured limb. Jeb, the driver, stared in disbelief from the truck. He saw the sheriff incapacitated and his partner writhing on the ground. He looked at Rosa, who now stood between the two vehicles, her chest heaving, her eyes burning with an intensity he had never seen in another human being. He made his decision. He slammed the truck into reverse and tore off into the night, leaving his partner behind. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. Rosa ran back to the sedan. "Are you okay?" she asked David, who was staring wide-eyed at the scene. I think so," he stammered. In the back, Eleanor was looking at her daughter, not with fear, but with a deep, sad understanding. "The Black Mamba," she whispered. Rosa ignored it. "Brody's gun," she said, her mind already on the next move. She ran to the cruiser, reached past the groaning sheriff, and pulled the service pistol from his holster. She also grabbed his radio. "Get his keys. We're taking his car." David, snapping out of his shock, did as he was told. They helped Elena out of the sedan and into the back of the cruiser. As David got behind the wheel, Rosa used the radio. She keyed the mic, her voice disguised, deeper and frantic. "All units, officer down. Shots fired at the Old Thorne property. Cabin 7, repeat. Shots fired. Officer needs immediate assistance." She tossed the radio into the dust. "That should keep them busy for a while. It'll give us a head start." David floored it, the sheriff's cruiser kicking up a plume of dirt as they sped away from the chaos. They were fugitives now, in a stolen police car with a corrupt sheriff's gun on the dashboard. But they were alive. And for the first time, they were on the offensive. Rosa had done more than just survive. She had taken the fight to them, turning their own weapons and their own authority against them. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a warrior, fighting for her mother, for the forgotten families, and for the poisoned land they had left behind. The game had changed. Thorne wanted a war, and Rosa was about to give him one he would never forget. David drove the stolen cruiser with a grim determination. pushing it 80 miles an hour down dark county roads. Rosa sat in the passenger seat, Brody's pistol heavy on her lap, her eyes scanning the darkness behind them. In the back seat, Eleanor was quiet, her shallow breaths the only sound in the car. "Where are we going?" David asked, his voice strained. He was a lawyer, a man of books and briefs. Car chases and stolen guns were not his world. "Away from here," Rosa said. "We need a hospital for my mother, but not one in the next 3 counties. Thorn's reach is long." She thought for a moment. "And we need leverage. Something more than a phone call to a state investigator who might be on his way or might be stuck in bureaucratic red tape for a week." "What kind of leverage?" David asked. "Proof," Rosa said, her gaze hardening. "He has records, shipping manifests from Petrochem, bank transfers, land deeds, something that ties him directly to the dumping. A man like Thorn, he's arrogant, he keeps trophies." "You want to go back," David said, incredulous. "To his ranch? They'll be hunting for us." "Not to fight," Rosa corrected. "To finish this. They'll be looking for this cruiser on the main roads. They'll be setting up roadblocks. They won't expect us to double back. They'll expect us to run." It was a crazy plan, born of desperation, but it was also brilliant. They drove for another hour, putting distance between them and the scene of the fight, then ditched the cruiser behind an abandoned gas station. Rosa wiped it clean of their fingerprints. They waited in the pre-dawn chill until a long-haul trucker pulled in to rest. Rosa approached him, not with a gun, but with the last $100 she had to her name. She told him a simple, believable story. Their car broke down, and she needed to get her sick mother to a relative in the next town over, back in the direction of Dust Devil County. The trucker, a kind-faced man, agreed. They rode in the rumbling cab, hidden from view, passing by the very deputies who were now searching for them. They were smuggled back into the heart of enemy territory. The trucker dropped them off a few miles from Thorn's main gate. "My contact, Peterson, the state investigator," David whispered as they hid in a dry creek bed. "He said he would start the process, but he needed probable cause to get a warrant for Thorn's property. Our testimony helps, but physical evidence would be a game changer. It would let him bypass the local judiciary entirely." "Then that's what will get him," Rosa said. She looked at her mother, who was weak but resolute. "Mama, you stay here with David. Stay hidden. I'm going in." "Rosa, no," Elena pleaded, her voice a weak rasp. "I have to," Rosa said, her voice gentle but firm. "He did this to you. He did this to the Garcias. I'm not running anymore." She looked at David. "If I'm not back by sunrise, take her and go. Get to Austin. Find Peterson. Tell him everything." Before David could argue, she was gone, melting into the shadows. Rosa moved like a ghost across the familiar landscape. She knew the layout of the ranch, the patrol routes, the blind spots. Her years of physical discipline had given her more than just strength. They had given her an awareness of her body and her surroundings that was almost supernatural. She bypassed the main house, heading for a large, detached office building where Thorn conducted his business. The lights were on inside. She could see Thorn through the window, pacing back and forth, shouting into his phone. He was furious, his perfect world crumbling around him. Jeb must have called him. He knew she had gotten away. She found a rear window, one she knew had a faulty lock. She slipped it open and slid inside, her feet making no sound on the polished floor. The office was opulent, filled with leather-bound books and hunting trophies. On his massive oak desk sat a high-end computer. It was password-protected, useless. She began to search, moving with quiet efficiency. Filing cabinets, locked. A safe behind a painting, also locked. She was running out of time. Thorn could finish his call and come back in at any moment. Then she saw it. On a small table next to his liquor cabinet was a framed photograph. It wasn't a family. It was of Thorn, shaking hands with a slick-looking executive. Behind them was the Petrochem Solutions logo. It was a deal-signing photo, a memento, an arrogant trophy. Rosa picked it up. There was something odd about the frame. It was thicker than it needed to be. She ran her fingers along the back panel and found a small, almost invisible seam. Using her nail, she pried it open. It wasn't just a picture frame. The back was hollowed out, and inside was a small silver USB flash drive. This was it, the leverage, the proof. Just as her fingers closed around it, she heard footsteps approaching the office door. The doorknob began to turn. There was nowhere to hide. She was trapped. Rosa's heart hammered against her ribs. She clutched the flash drive in her fist, her body tensing for a fight she couldn't win. The door swung open, and Colonel Thorne stepped inside, his face a thunderous mask of rage. He stopped dead when he saw her. His eyes flickered from her face to the opened picture frame in her other hand, and the rage was replaced by a flicker of pure animal panic. "You," he breathed, his voice a venomous whisper. He lunged for the phone on his desk, his intention clear, to call for his men. Rosa reacted on pure instinct. She threw the heavy picture frame with all her might. It spun through the air and smashed into the side of Thorne's head with a sickening crack. He staggered back, stunned, a trickle of blood running down his temple. The phone clattered to the floor. That was all the opening she needed. She didn't run for the window. She ran at him. This wasn't a ring, and there were no rules, but the objective was the same: neutralize the threat. She drove her shoulder into his chest, using her lower center of gravity to lift him off his feet and slam him back against his massive oak desk. Papers and pens scattered across the floor. Thorne was bigger and heavier, but he was soft, enraged and disoriented. Rosa was focused, a coiled spring of controlled power. He thrashed, trying to grab her, but she was too quick. She twisted away from his grasp and locked her arms around his neck from behind, sinking in a perfect rear-naked choke. It was a move she had used to win a dozen championships. "It's over, Thorne," she hissed in his ear, her voice low and steady as she squeezed. "You poisoned my mother. You destroyed families. It ends now." Thorne clawed at her arms, his face turning a deep shade of purple. His breath came in ragged, desperate gasps. He was fading. But just as his struggles began to weaken, his flailing hand found something on the desk, a heavy brass letter opener shaped like a miniature sword. With a final desperate surge of adrenaline, he swung it backward blindly. The sharp point caught Rosa in the side, just below her ribs. A searing, white-hot pain shot through her. Her grip loosened for a split second, but it was enough. Thorne broke free, gasping for air, the bloody letter opener still in his hand. He scrambled away from her, a feral grin spreading across his face. "You should have just kept your place in the mud, you animal," he snarled, advancing on her. Rosa backed away, clutching her bleeding side. The pain was intense, making her vision swim. She was losing blood, and her strength was draining away with it. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on the edge of an expensive rug. She fell hard, her head hitting the wooden floor. Thorne stood over her, raising the letter opener for a final killing blow. This was it. She had come so close, only to fail at the last moment. The flash drive was still clutched in her hand, but it would be useless if she was dead. Suddenly, the office's main door burst open. Standing there, silhouetted against the pre-dawn light, was not David, but Elena, her mother. She was holding Brody's heavy service pistol in both trembling hands, the barrel aimed squarely at Thorne. "Get away from my daughter." Elena's voice was weak, but it carried the unwavering strength of a mother protecting her child. Thorne froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You can barely stand, old woman. You think you can shoot that thing?" "He poisoned me, Rosa," Elena said, her eyes never leaving Thorne. "He did this to me. He won't do it to you." As Thorne took a step toward Elena, dismissing her as a threat, Rosa saw her opening. The pain in her side was a fire, but the fighter inside her took over. She swept her leg out, hooking Thorne's ankle. It was a simple, perfectly executed trip. Caught completely by surprise, Thorne's legs went out from under him. He crashed to the floor with a heavy thud, the letter opener flying from his grasp. At that exact moment, the sound of sirens filled the air. Not the single familiar wail of Brody's cruiser, but a chorus of them growing closer and closer. David had done it. He hadn't run. He'd used Brody's radio from the abandoned cruiser, found a channel to a neighboring county's dispatch, and called for backup, telling them an officer was being held hostage by Colonel Thorne. Thorne's head snapped toward the sound of the approaching sirens, his face a picture of utter ruin. He was finished. Rosa, clutching her side, pushed herself up. She looked from her mother, who was still holding the gun with fierce determination, to the defeated man on the floor. She walked over, picked up the flash drive, and held it up for him to see. "Checkmate," she said. The flashing lights of state police cars bathed the opulent office in strobes of red and blue. Paramedics rushed in. Their first priority, the bleeding woman with the makeshift bandage pressed to her side. As they carefully helped Rosa onto a stretcher, her eyes met her mother's. Elena lowered the gun, her strength finally giving out, and allowed a state trooper to gently take it from her hands. Rosa never let go of the flash drive. She handed it directly to a grim-faced man in a suit who introduced himself as State Investigator Peterson. "This is what you need," she said, before the pain finally overwhelmed her. The fall of Colonel Alistair Thorne was not swift and silent. It was a thunderous collapse that echoed all the way to the state capital. The flash drive was a treasure trove of corruption. It contained scanned copies of illegal contracts with Petrochem Solutions, detailed payment ledgers showing millions in kickbacks, and encrypted emails discussing the systematic sabotage of local farms. Most damning of all was a folder labeled Contingencies, which held files on the dozen families who had been forced out. It detailed the threats made against them and the untraceable cash payments used to make them disappear forever. With ironclad evidence in hand, state and federal agencies descended on Dust Devil County like a storm. Thorne, arrogant to the last, refused a plea deal, convinced his money and influence would save him. He was wrong. His trial was a media sensation. One by one, witnesses who had lived in fear for years found their courage. Maria Flores testified about her sister's family. Jeb, Thorne's former foreman, turned state's evidence, detailing years of intimidation and sabotage in exchange for a reduced sentence. Hank and Sheriff Brody, facing decades in prison, remained silent, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. 6 months later, the verdicts came in. Colonel Alistair Thorne was found guilty on all counts, including racketeering, conspiracy, and multiple counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in a federal penitentiary, his assets seized to fund the environmental cleanup and a compensation fund for his victims. Sheriff Brody received 30 years for his role in the conspiracy and for betraying his oath of office. For Rosa, the victory was bittersweet. She recovered from her wound, a long, jagged scar left as a permanent reminder of her fight. The media had a field day with her story. The Black Mamba's last stand. Indeed, they tried to paint her as a vigilante, but to the people of Dust Devil County and the countless others who followed the story, she was a hero. She ignored the cameras, focusing solely on her mother. Elena's prognosis was serious. The years of drinking poisoned water had taken a severe toll, but with the best doctors, funded by the Victims' Compensation Fund, she had a chance. Her fight was now in a sterile hospital room, with Rosa by her side every single day. One afternoon, David Chen came to visit. He looked different, more confident, the exhaustion in his eyes replaced by a fire of purpose. "Thorne's assets are being liquidated," he told Rosa. "The Garcia property and all the others have been seized. The EPA has declared the entire area a Superfund site. It'll take years, but they're going to clean it." He handed her a thick envelope. "This is the first payment from the compensation fund. It's for you and your mother, for what you both endured." Rosa looked at the check, the amount far more than she had ever seen in her life. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it represented. Acknowledgement. Justice. "What will you do now?" David asked. Rosa looked out the hospital window toward the distant Texas plains. She had come to Dust Devil County to disappear, to bury her past. Instead, she had found a new future. "First," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I make sure my mother gets better. Then, I think there are other Dust Devil counties out there, other Thorns, and other people who need someone to fight for them." She was no longer just Rosa, the farmhand, or the Black Mamba, the wrestler. She was a symbol of resistance. She had been pushed into the mud, humiliated and nearly killed. But she had refused to stay down. She had fought back, not just for her own dignity, but for the soul of a community. And in doing so, she had earned more than just respect. She had earned her own redemption. The fight was over, but her war for justice was just beginning. I watched until the end. 2 years later. The air in Dust Devil County still carried the scent of dry earth, but something had changed. The silence was different. It was no longer the heavy, oppressive silence of fear, but the quiet hum of recovery. Hulking EPA trucks were a common sight on the roads, and men in hazmat suits worked methodically on the properties Thorn had poisoned, their work a slow but steady promise of healing. The town of Redemption was tentatively living up to its name. New families drawn by the now affordable land and the promise of a fresh start had begun to move in. Maria's Diner was the town's unofficial center, always busy. The clatter of plates and hum of conversation, a testament to the community's returning heartbeat. She had a framed newspaper clipping behind the counter, the headline reading, "Rancher Tyrant Gets Life. Local Woman Hailed as Hero." Far away, in a concrete cell in a maximum security federal prison, Alistair Thorne was no longer a colonel. He was inmate number 734. His custom-tailored suits were replaced by a drab orange jumpsuit. His empire of dirt and fear had been reduced to an 8 by 10 foot box. He had no power, no influence, and no name. He had tried to erase others, and in the end, he was the one who had been erased. He would die in that box, a forgotten man. His legacy nothing but a toxic cleanup site and a cautionary tale. David Chen's office was no longer a cramped room above a hardware store. He now headed a small but fiercely effective non-profit in Austin, the Rural Justice Project. Funded by a grant that was established after the Thorne case exposed the vulnerability of rural communities, he and a team of young lawyers fought for people exactly like the Garcias. His walls were covered not with accolades, but with maps of Texas, dotted with pins marking other small towns where corporate greed was poisoning the land and exploiting the powerless. The Thorne case had given him a new identity, and he wore it with pride. He was no longer just a lawyer, he was a guardian. Rosa and her mother lived in a small, neat house 100 miles from Dust Devil County. It had a garden out back where Elena would sit for hours, wrapped in a blanket, watching the birds. The doctors had done all they could. The damage to her lungs was permanent, but the disease had been halted. She was weak, but she was alive and she was at peace. She had seen justice done. She had seen her daughter become the champion she was always meant to be. Rosa's life was quiet, but it was not still. The compensation money had given them security, but it hadn't given her rest. The scar on her side was a dull ache on cold mornings, a constant reminder. She didn't wrestle anymore, but she fought harder than ever. Most days she was on her laptop at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee at her side. She worked as the lead investigator for David's Rural Justice Project. She was the one who answered the calls from frightened people whispering about their wells tasting strange, or their neighbors being threatened off their land. She was the one who knew exactly what questions to ask, what signs to look for. She sifted through property records, corporate filings, and whispered rumors, piecing together puzzles of corruption with the same focus she once used to dismantle an opponent in the ring. The Black Mamba was truly retired, but Rosa had found a new arena. Her opponents were no longer other wrestlers. They were corporations, corrupt officials, and men like Thorne. Her fight wasn't for a championship belt anymore. It was for the simple, undeniable dignity of people the world had tried to forget. She had been pushed into the mud to be taught her place. Instead, she had found her purpose there. Rosa's story is a powerful testament to the fact that you can never judge a person's strength by their circumstances. A man in a position of absolute power tried to humiliate a quiet farm worker, to grind her dignity into the mud for everyone to see. He thought she was just another cog in his machine, someone who could be broken and discarded without a second thought. What he failed to see was the champion's fire in her eyes. He didn't just push the wrong woman. He awakened a force of nature that he was completely unprepared to handle. This entire journey started with a demand for $27. A small amount of money, but it was tied to something priceless: respect. It was a fight that escalated from a simple injustice to a war against a corrupt system that preyed on the vulnerable. Rosa's victory wasn't just about sending one bad man to prison. It was about proving that no one is too small to demand what is right, and that courage, once unleashed, is more powerful than any amount of money or influence. It was a victory for the Garcias, for Samuel, and for every other family whose name Thorne tried to erase from history. Every character in this story showed a different kind of strength. We saw Elena's fierce, protective love. A mother who could barely stand yet found the power to aim a gun to save her child. We saw David Chen's unwavering belief in the law, a man who refused to be intimidated and used his knowledge as a weapon for good. And of course, we saw Rosa, who fused the discipline of a champion athlete with the unbreakable will of someone fighting for everything she holds dear. These are the stories we are passionate about telling. Tales of ordinary people who find themselves in extraordinary circumstances and rise to the occasion. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of standing up to bullies and fighting for justice, no matter the odds, then please help us continue our mission. Hit that like button to show your support and subscribe to the channel so you're the first to know when we release a new story. We have an incredible community here, and we want to know who has stuck with Rosa's journey from the very beginning. Let us know you're a true supporter by going to the comment section right now and typing, "I watched until the end." Your comment does more than just show your support. It tells the algorithm that this is a story worth sharing, helping it reach more people who need to see that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. The fight for what is right continues, and the spirit of Rosa lives on in many forms. If you were on the edge of your seat watching her turn the tables on Colonel Thorne, then the story we have selected for you next is one you absolutely must see. It's the shocking story of a city bus driver who is publicly shamed and fired by a wealthy politician for a minor accident. But the politician made a critical mistake. He didn't realize that the bus driver's route took him past his secret meetings every single day, and the bus's security camera has been recording everything for the past 2 years. The revenge he unleashes will dismantle a political career and expose a citywide scandal. Don't wait. Click on the video that is appearing on your screen right now to jump straight into that incredible story. Thank you for spending your time with us. We are grateful for every single one of you. We'll see you in the next one.